The tip of Florida is bathed in subtropical moisture and sunshine, the two most important requirements of life. And in this rich medium, life occurs in abundance. From the dense grassland river of the Everglades to the tangles and muck of the mangrove wilderness, the southern tip of the peninsula teems with a huge variety of fascinating creatures that share the energy of the sun. The sun's energy is captured by plants, then distributed as one creature eats another in a complex pattern known as the food web. Those creatures which eat plants are called herbivores. Those which eat animals are called carnivores. Animals which capture other animals for food are called predators. Through the food web, every living being, small or large, becomes the food of other living beings, until all have their place in a vast array of interrelated communities. John James Audubon was the best-known American naturalist of his time and remains the best known today. In the 1830s, Audubon studied and illustrated the profusion of Florida wildlife and wrote an ornithological biography in which he made remarkably accurate and vivid descriptions of the scenes he observed.
Sandy Island, of which I have already spoken in my second volume, is remarkable as a breeding place for various species of water and land birds. As we entered the well-known nesting place, we saw nests on every bush, cactus, or tree. Whether the number was 1,000 or 10, I cannot say, but this I well know. I counted 47 on a single plum tree. The nests of the ibis measure about 15 inches in their greatest diameter and are formed of dry twigs intermixed with fibrous roots and green branches of the trees growing on the island. The bird breeds only once a year, and the full number of eggs is 3. They measure 2 inches and a quarter in length, with a diameter of 1 inch and 5/8, are rough to the touch, of a dull white color, irregularly splotched with deep reddish brown. The eggs are deposited from the 10th of April to the 1st of May. The young birds, which are first covered with thick down of a dark gray color, are fed by regurgitation. They take about 5 weeks to be able to fly. As soon as the young are able to provide for themselves, the old birds leave them, and the different individuals are then seen searching for food apart.
Young birds are found preening, trying their wings, and exercising all the skills they will need to move about, to keep themselves fit and well fed.
While breeding, the white ibises go to a great distance in search of food, flying in flocks of several hundreds. All the birds that are not sitting go off, perhaps 20 or 30 miles to the great mud flats, where they collect an abundance of food. They rise with common accord from the breeding ground, forming themselves into long lines, often a mile in extent.
The white ibis is a true predator. Its diet consists of small crabs, snails and slugs, crustaceans, and even flying insects. We usually think of predators as those fierce creatures which pursue and kill large prey animals. Such predators can deplete their food supply, but so abundant are the smaller animals of the warm waters and muck of Florida that they are beyond the capacity of the birds to consume. The ibis eats huge numbers of tiny animals. Flocks of birds support themselves by probing the muck for its crowds of tiny inhabitants. By taking many individuals of types which are smaller but more numerous, the ibis has capitalized on a less vulnerable food base. Many of the crustaceans which are food to the ibis burrow into the sand and tunnel through the muck. The ibis gathers this food by probing with its long, sensitive bill.
The white ibis attends the tides at whatever hour they may be, and return the moment the tide begins to flow. The flight of the ibis is rapid and protracted. These birds pass through the air with alternate flapping and sailings. At other times, the white ibis rises to an immense height in the air, where it performs beautiful evolutions. Should the sun be shining, they appear in their full beauty, and the glossy black tips of their wings form a fine contrast with the yellowish white of the rest of their plumage. After they have thus, as it were, amused themselves for some time, they glide down and alight either on a tree or on the ground. The change in coloring of the bill, legs, and feet of this bird that takes place in the breeding season is worthy of remark, the bill being then of a deep orange red, and the legs and feet of a red nearly amounting to carmine. During winter, these parts are of a dull flesh color. I am thus particular in these matters because I am doubtful if anyone else has ever paid attention to them.
The willet is another predator whose food habits are very similar to the ibis. The two birds are limited in their competition, however, the ibis taking the deeper burrowers, while the willet is confined to the creatures which stay closer to the surface.
Many individuals of this fine species spend the winter in our southern states, and the extent of its migration northwards is comparatively limited. Their propensity to remain at all seasons in the immediate vicinity of the coast is such that they are very seldom met with far inland. They generally travel in flocks and congregate for the purpose of breeding, being attracted when passing by the notes of those which have already arrived at a chosen spot. The males and females remain together until autumn, when several families join and live peaceably together. The food of the willet consists of aquatic insects, small crabs, and fiddlers, which it procures either by pursuing on foot or by probing in their burrows along the mud bars.
In this interesting interaction, the smaller bird is a ruddy turnstone, itself a seeker under stones and shells for similar prey to that taken by the willet. Watch the turnstone take food that escapes the willet, a predator stealing from a predator.
The willets usually retire to the interior of the larger salt marshes for the purpose of forming their nests and raising their broods in security. In the vicinity of the shallow pools which frequently occur in such places, the bird prepares a nest on the ground among the rank grasses. The eggs, usually 4 in number, are placed with the broad end outwards. Once mated, they attend to the security of their eggs and brood with affectionate care, and are silent until disturbed by some of their numerous enemies. The sight of a crow, a turkey buzzard, a quadruped of any kind, and more especially of a gunner, at once excites greatest alarm, and rising on wing, they fly at a considerable distance, vociferating their anger with great vehemence, and continually endeavoring to allure you away from the spot where their treasure is concealed.
The broken wing act of the willet is a response widespread among shore birds to nest predators. So the predator is at the same time the prey of other predators in the scheme which makes each living creature, eventually, the food of others.
The males are smaller than the females. I have presented you with figures of the adult, both in the winter and summer plumage.
A remnant of the age of dinosaurs, the alligator is superbly equipped as a predator. But the alligator probably has a greater impact on the wildlife community by keeping the Everglades pools or sloughs open than by what it catches. When the dry season comes to Florida, the thrashing and feeding frenzies of the alligators deepen the sloughs in which the remaining water collects. While the rest of the Everglades dries up, alligator sloughs concentrate the wildlife inhabitants, providing water for a great variety of creatures and a concentrated food supply for the alligator. The slough can easily support the number of alligators required to keep the pool open. Not usually an active pursuer of prey, the alligator is an opportunist, watching patiently for an easy catch. The sick and unfit are the first to fall victim. It is not consumption by the predator, but the availability of water which controls the wildlife population. Even the bald eagle is more of a scavenger than a killer of prime, healthy animals.
The figure of this noble bird is well known throughout the civilized world, emblazoned as it is on our national standard. The nest, which in some instances is of great size, is usually placed on a very tall tree, destitute of branches to a considerable height, but by no means always a dead one. It is composed of sticks from 3 to 5 feet in length, large pieces of turf, rank weeds, and Spanish moss in abundance whenever that substance appears to be near. When finished, it measures 5 to 6 feet in diameter, and so great is the accumulation of materials that it sometimes measures the same in depth, it being occupied for a great number of years in succession and receiving some augmentation each season. The eagle follows a course less suited to a bird apparently so able to supply itself. No sooner does the fish-hawk make its appearance than the eagle follows it and robs it of the hard-earned fruits of its labor. Perched on some tall summit, he watches every motion of the osprey while on wing. When the latter rises from the water, forth rushes the eagle in pursuit. He mounts above the fish-hawk and threatens it by actions well understood, when the latter, fearing perhaps that its life is in danger, drops its prey. In an instant, the eagle grasps it. The prize is carried off in silence. The motions of the fish-hawk in the air are graceful and as majestic as those of the eagle. Its wings are extended at right angles to the body, and when thus flying, it is easily distinguished from all other hawks by the eye of an observer accustomed to note the flight of birds. The nest is generally placed in a large tree in the immediate vicinity of the water, whether along the seashore, on the margins of the inland lakes, or by some large river.
The relations of predator to predator, of predator to prey, and of both to their environment are more complex than we usually think. If a predator depletes its food supply, it will perish. A system has evolved whereby those predators which eat larger prey usually select individuals which are marginal to the reproduction of the prey, such as the old or the sick. The vulture is not really a predator at all, but rather a scavenger, which serves a useful role in cleaning up the remains of the dead.
Vultures are gregarious, feed on all sorts of food, and suck the eggs and devour the young of many species of heron and other birds. After rising from the ground, which it does with a single spring, it beats its wings only a few times to enable it to proceed in its usual way of sailing. They rise high in the air and perform large circles. They sail admirably with their wings spread beyond the horizontal position and their tips bent upward by the weight of the body. In the Floridas, I have, when shooting, been followed by some of them to watch the spot where I might deposit my game, which, if not carefully covered, they would devour. I have represented the adult male in full plumage, along with a young bird procured in the autumn of its first year.
Audubon chose well when he explored Florida for its bird life. He found a great variety to collect, describe, and illustrate. Life occurs in such abundance in the Everglades that many naturalists have followed Audubon. Returning to that same rich assemblage of life, we have learned more about the relationships that connect individuals and species into a greater wildlife community.